Recognizing our MLA from Surrey Panorama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honourable members of this House, I rise today on second reading of Bill 13, the Safe Access to Places of Public Worship Act 2026. And I would like to comment on my friend's speech just now, and I do appreciate the strong message that that places of worship are places of community where we should all come together, and would encourage everybody in this House to spend some time in places of worship. But let me be crystal clear from the outset. Every British Columbian, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, Sikh, Hindu, any faith, deserves to attend their place of worship in safety, free from intimidation, harassment, vandalism, or disruption. The threats are not theoretical. Since 2001, and especially in a shocking wave since 2021, churches across Canada, including many in British Columbia, have faced repeated attacks. A murder right on the grounds of one of our gurdwaras. Vandalism, graffiti, desecration, and arson have scarred communities. Nationally, reports document over 100 churches vandalized, burned, or destroyed since 2021, with at least 33 fully burned to the ground between May 2021 and late 2023. The vast majority ruled arson. In British Columbia, churches were among the early targets. These incidents continued alongside broader rises in hate crimes. The alarming surge in anti-Semitism since October 7th, 2023 has compounded danger, with synagogues facing fire bombings, shootings, and vandalism. In 2024 alone, police reported hate crimes targeting religion in Canada stood at 1,342 incidents nationally, with Jewish communities accounting for 70% of them, despite representing just 1% of the population. In British Columbia, hate crimes rose 23% between 2022 and 2023, with religion-motivated incidents surging more than 50%. Jewish Canadians are 25 times more likely to be targeted than any other group. These numbers are not abstract. They represent real fear in our synagogues, mosques, churches, gurdwaras, and temples. But this bill is not that action. This is lipstick on a pig. It is pure NDP symbolism, placating the faith community with a shiny new provincial statute while doing absolutely nothing to address the root causes of the safety crisis facing our places of worship. It creates 20-meter access zones around churches, synagogues, mosques, gurdwaras, and temples. It prohibits impeding access, disrupting activities, interference, which is defined so broadly, it actually includes advising or persuading someone not to participate, and anything that could reasonably be expected to cause concern for a person's physical or mental safety. It allows warrantless arrests for those provincially regulated infractions and lets the Attorney General or anyone seek injunctions. And it sunsets in 2030. Mr. Speaker, every single one of these enforcement clauses already exists in the Criminal Code of Canada. Police and courts have had these tools for decades. This bill does not add one new officer, one new dollar of spending, one new dollar for policing, or one new tool that wasn't already available. It is fake legislation designated to let the NDP say they did something, while their broader failure on public safety continues to spiral out of control. Let's go clause by clause, because the devil is in the details, and these details here reveal a bill that is useless as it is redundant. Clause 1 sets out the definitions. It defines an access zone, interference, as advising or persuading, or attempting to advise or persuade by any means, including graphic, verbal, or written means, a person to refrain from participating in an activity at a place of public worship. It defines place of public worship expansively to include any property exempt from taxation under the Community Charter, Vancouver Charter, or the Taxation Rural Area Act, plus anything cabinet prescribes by regulation. Occupier is anyone with responsibility or control. Of course, a police officer includes provincial, municipal, or designated constables. But Mr. Speaker, these definitions are deliberately broad and vague. Interference could capture a peaceful conversation, a pamphlet, or even a sign. This is not targeted protection. It is a dragnet that chills legitimate expression. And yet, the criminal code already covers every harmful intent here without the need for new provincial jargon. Section 423 criminalizes intimidation. Section 176 specifically protects religious worship from willful disturbance or interruption. These are real criminal offenses with real teeth, not provincial regulatory language designed to create the illusion of action. Clause 2 in this bill is the heart of the prohibitions. Subsection 1 says a person must not, in an access zone, impede access to or egress from the place of worship, disrupt activities, engage in interference, or intimidate or attempt to intimidate or do or say anything that could reasonably cause concern for a person's physical or mental safety. Subsection 2 bans willfully participating in a gathering where others are doing any of that. This is the NDP's big new protection. But again, every single prohibition is already a criminal code offense. Impeding access or egress, that's covered by Section 423, intimidation, and Section 430, mischief. Disrupting activities at a place of worship is Section 176(2). Makes it an offense punishable by summary conviction to willfully disturb or interrupt an assemblage met for religious worship. Interference by advising or persuading. That falls under criminal harassment in Section 264, or intimidation, Section 423. And intimidation or causing reasonable concern for safety, Section 264 is criminal harassment. And again, Section 423, Section 1, explicitly prohibit using threats, violence, or other means to intimidate. And for the real threats, vandalism, graffiti, arson, Section 430, subsection 4.1, provides up to 10 years for hate-motivated mischief against religious property. These are indictable offenses with real jail time. Indictable offenses are the most serious offenses in Canada. Police don't need a provincial 20-meter bubble zone to act. They already have the full force of federal law, federal criminal law under the Criminal Code of Canada. This clause doesn't strengthen safety, it duplicates it, creates confusion, and wastes legislative time on a problem the Criminal Code solved decades ago. And I might add that under the Safe Access to Schools Act, it has a further clause which at least attempts to do something, which says in those bubble zones, it prohibits people from protesting. This doesn't even include that, although I would believe that is, if was tested, would be against the Charter. Clause 3 requires notice to establish an access zone. Signs must be posted so they're clearly visible in daylight It says, under normal weather conditions, from the approach to each ordinary point of entry. The signs must identify the place of worship, describe the zone, list the prohibitions, and include any other prescribed information. No one but the owner or occupier can remove, alter, or deface them. That was a lot just to say. Mr. Speaker, it's a bureaucratic theater. Real criminals who vandalize synagogues at night or harass worshipers don't read the signs. Police responding to a disturbance don't need a laminated poster to know that blocking a mosque door is already illegal under the criminal code. This clause adds red tape and paperwork for faith communities already stretched thin, while doing nothing to prevent the crimes that actually occur outside the 20-meter line or after hours. Exactly the kind of attacks that have burned churches and desecrated sacred spaces for years. Clause 4 defines exactly what is included in the access zone. For a standalone place of worship, it's the entire parcel plus 20 meters from the boundaries. For multi-use buildings, it gets even more complicated. It's 20 meters from entrances, exits, or passageways, unless Cabinet, of course, prescribes something different. Private residences and places the public doesn't ordinarily access are excluded. Again, this is arbitrary geography dressed up as protection. The criminal code doesn't need a tape measure. Section 176 applies to the actual disturbance of worship, wherever it occurs. Section 430 covers damage to the property itself. Section 423 prohibits intimidation regardless of exact meters. The NDP is creating a provincial map of safe zones that overlaps with federal criminal jurisdiction, all while the real threats, organized hate, online incitement, or midnight vandalism and arson that have plagued churches for the last 25 years and intensified dramatically since 2021, operate far beyond any 20-meter bubble. This is fake legislation at its finest. It looks tough on paper, but collapses under the weight of existing law. Clause 5 allows a police officer to arrest without a warrant anyone they believe on reasonable grounds is contravening Section 2. This is the NDP's big enforcement win. Yet Section 495 of the Criminal Code already gives police broad warrantless arrest powers for indictable offenses like intimidation, criminal harassment, mischief. And for summary offenses tied to religious worship under Section 176, police have always had the authority to act when they witness the disturbance. This clause doesn't expand police power. It just rebrands a provincial ticketable offense as something that feels like criminal law. In practice, it lowers the threshold while pretending to raise it. Real safety comes from officers who can respond quickly to the kind of arsons and vandalism that have destroyed dozens of churches, not from duplicative arrest language that sits on the books unused because police are already overwhelmed. Clause 6 allows the Supreme Court to grant injunctions, even without notice, restraining anyone from contravening Section 2, with interim injunctions possible. It applies whether or not a penalty exists. The courts have been granted injunctions for harassment, trespass, and intimidation for generations under inherent jurisdiction and the criminal code. This is not new. It is redundant paperwork for the Attorney General's office, while faith communities wait for actual officers to show up at the scenes of burned and vandalized places of worship. Clause 7 gives Cabinet sweeping regulation-making power. They can prescribe classes of property, designate policing units, add or remove exemptions for labor actions or other activities, dictate exactly what signs must say and where they go, and change the size of access zones for any place or class of places. This is the ultimate NDP control clause. Endless bureaucratic tweaks without coming back to this House. It turns every place of worship into a regulatory experiment. Meanwhile, the Criminal Code provides consistent, nationwide standards that don't change on a Lieutenant Governor and Council whim. This clause exposes the bill for what it is, not bold protection, but a framework for future ministerial fiddling while the real crisis of under-policing festers and churches continue to burn. Clauses 8 and 9 are straightforward. They act as sunsets in 2030 or earlier by regulation, and it comes into force by royal assent. Enough said. Mr. Speaker, this entire bill is fake legislation. It is modeled after the 1994 Access to Abortion Services Act bubble zones, which were narrowly tailored to a specific, highly charged medical context. Those zones were upheld by courts because they protected patients in a unique setting. But slapping the same model onto every place of worship, province-wide, with broader prohibitions and no evidence that the Criminal Code tools are insufficient, is legislative laziness. Compare it to Federal Bill C-9, introduced in October. It amends the Criminal Code to ban hate symbols like swastikas, with exemptions, adds aggravating factors for hate-motivated offenses, and creates a specific offense of intimidation at buildings for religious worship. Importantly, it does not create fixed distance bubble zones. It targets conduct, not geography. The federal approach respects jurisdiction and focuses on real criminal behavior. Why is this NDP government duplicating and diluting federal criminal law with provincial red tape? Because it's easier than fixing the real problem. Their own failed policies that have left police hands tied and communities unprotected. While faith leaders are begging for real protection, the NDP's response is signs and 20-meter zones. Meanwhile, across this province, crime is out of control in ways that directly threaten everyone, including those trying to worship. The Auditor General's March 2026 report laid it bare. The RCMP is short at least 3,400 frontline officers as of September 2025. Vacancy rates exceed the critical 7% threshold in 9 of 11 provinces and territories served by contract policing. Recruitment has failed for years. In 2025, they needed 2,700 new officers, but hired only 892. That falls onto this province for providing the members required to be trained. Officers are doing more with less every single day, pulling from integrated teams, facing longer response times, and watching repeat offenders cycle through soft-on-crime bail system the NDP defended for years. Clearance rates for property crime and hate-motivated mischief remain abysmal. Communities are hiring private security, not because they want to, but because the NDP has left them no choice. And what does this government do? Jewish communities in BC alone are now spending over $100,000 every month on private security just to keep worshipers safe. And back to what does the government do? They slap 7% PST on those security services, taxing the very measures communities are forced to take because public safety has collapsed under their watch. This is not leadership. This is extortion by another name. Small businesses, strata, and faith groups, already spending thousands monthly on guards, now face another 7% hit. The NDP creates the crisis, focuses private solutions, then taxes the solution. This bill does nothing to stop that hypocrisy. The official opposition believes strongly in the right to peaceful assembly under Section 2C of the Charter. We also believe in freedom of expression. Bubble zones can chill legitimate protest, as we've seen with school access zones. But even setting charter concerns aside, this bill fails on its own terms. It does not deter the real threats: vandalism at night, online harassment, or organized hate, because those happen outside the 20-meter zone or when no one is there to post signs. It creates a false sense of security while the NDP continues to under-resource the very police who are already doing heroic work with fewer officers than ever. Mr. Speaker, the faith community deserves better than this performative nonsense. They deserve a government that treats public safety as a core responsibility, not a photo op. They deserve more RCMP officers, more municipal officers, faster bail reform that actually keeps repeat offenders locked up, higher clearance rates, and an end to taxing the private security they're forced to buy because this province policing model is crumbling. The NDP can pat themselves on the back for introducing Bill 13 in unison with Bill 12. They can claim they're expanding protections, but British Columbians see through it. This is not protection. It's abdication. It is the government admitting they cannot enforce the criminal code effectively. So it creates a parallel provincial regime that duplicates existing powers while doing nothing to fix the resource crisis. We in the official opposition will always stand with faith communities against hate. We support real tools for police. We support cracking down on anti-Semitism and every form of religious hatred. But we will not pretend that this bill does any of those things. Pure NDP theatre, while the real crisis of crime, under-policing, and self-funded security continues. I urge every member to reject this symbolic gesture. Demand real resources for police. Demand enforcement of the criminal code we already have. And demand an end to the hypocrisy of taxing the very safety measures this government's failures have forced upon our most vulnerable communities. British Columbians of every faith deserve to worship without fear. They deserve a government that delivers safety, not slogans. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.